Hi everybody, welcome to Glisten. This month's episode, you get to meet my dear friend Heather Gray. She is a mom, she's an entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about her journey with faith and also her journey with infertility and trying to have the family that she believed that God had promised to her. So I hope you'll tune in, check it out, and keep the conversation going. So Heather, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so honored that you're here. I'm so grateful that I feel like God sent you into my life as just a gift, and you're so power-packed, full of gifts and talents and your personality. I just love everything about you. But one of the things that stood out to me when we first met and talked is that you have such an incredible journey. I feel like you're so young, but yet you have had such an incredible journey so far, and you've really had to really trust God and have a lot of faith. And I know that one of the things that we had talked about was your journey in faith with your family, and how you really wanted a family, and you had to really stand on some serious faith during the battle for that. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Like, did you always dream of having a family? Like, when did that come about?
I did. Yeah, I definitely did. When I was little, I just knew I wanted the 2.5 kids and the picket fence and all the things. And about a year after Daniel and I got married, we knew that we had always, kind of had the grand dream of having a boy and a girl. And about a year after we got married, we started trying to conceive. And, time went by and month after month went by. And we were like, wow, this isn't as easy, as people say that it is. So after about 6 months, we went and talked to a doctor, and he was like, well, yeah, we really give you about 6 to 9 months and say that that's normal. It takes some people longer than others. So we're like, okay. So at the end of the 9 months, we went back and had a more difficult conversation, and he basically just, had told us that he'd like to look into it a little further, that, they really deem you as having infertility issues when you hit that 9 to 12 month mark. So that's kind of, where that began.
And so what were the thoughts that were going through your head at that time? Like, when he told you that, what did that say to you? Like, what were you thinking in your mind? And what was Daniel thinking? Like, what were y'all thinking together? What were y'all talking about? And how did you handle that?
Well, honestly, when he first said it, of course, Daniel's like, oh, it's easy. It'll just take us a little longer. I don't think that your initial response is ever like, this is going to be years of a journey. For me, I was a little bit more like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me, initially. And then, anybody who has struggled with infertility knows they test both sides. And we had, kind of furthered everything and knew that Daniel was okay. And so from that, then I had all of the feelings of, it's my fault. What am I supposed to do about it? It was just a big burden, on me personally as the wife and the one who is supposed to be able to get pregnant and can't,
And it's like, you probably feel like you feel that way, although you had nothing to do with it. Like, you had no control over it. That's not like you designed yourself. Like, you just feel like there's something wrong. I know I've talked to so many people, and I looked at some statistics, and they say, I think it's like 12% of women who struggle with that. And then a lot of times it's like, I think the percentage that I read was 40%. It's usually 40%. It's the man, and then if it's only, if the woman percentage is lower, that really would cause you to feel that way. So what did you do from that point forward, and how long was that journey?
So it was 4 years before we conceived. Luckily, prayerfully, I was really grateful that I never had to experience a miscarriage, because I don't. God, the Bible says that God doesn't give you more than you can handle, and I truly believe that in that season, I don't know what I would have done, but I know many women, do have to go through that, and it's its own sort of journey. But for us, we went through and just kind of did basic, they start you very basic, and we did small inseminations and that type of thing, and then it got more aggressive with medication. And all in all, we had 11 failed inseminations, and over the course of 4 years, you go through so many different emotions in that. You go through, the sadness, you go through the disbelief, you go through the bitterness, definitely. You go through, all the different things in your marriage as well. I remember one time Daniel and I were driving in the car, and I remember having to look at him and say, if I can never give you a child, like, are we still going to be good? And, sorry, it's just a really real thing, I think, that a lot of women go through, but as women, we're supposed to be so strong, and we're supposed to always have it all together. And so it was really hard to, one, find someone who could really relate, because along the journey you get so many people who are like, oh, just keep believing, oh, paint the nursery. I can't tell you how many times you're at church and people walk up to you and they're like, oh, just keep holding on. God told me last night, your baby's on the way, And you get so much of that it's hard to find someone who can just really be like, I know this stinks, and I'm going to get in the trenches with you, and I'm going to pray with you, and follow up with you, and just really help foster that. And so there were plenty of times in those seasons as well that, I had that, where I had women who knew, my journey, and it was almost like in the moments where I felt like I couldn't hold myself up, the Lord was always faithful to send somebody to encourage me, or to, just say the right thing. Because so many times in an infertility struggle, people say the worst things,
Yes.
And so, yeah, it was part of my journey, it's made me who I am, but it definitely was long enough. Yeah.
I'm thinking when you said that, because I actually did have a miscarriage, and I remember before when I would hear about other people having miscarriages, because I hadn't had the experience, I just didn't really think. I was like, oh, well, they'll just try again and it'll be fine. But you don't realize that when someone, so when I got pregnant, you automatically, plan that baby right into your life. They are a baby, and you are so excited. And, we bought a little hat and had a little football, because of course it was going to be a boy. That was what we thought. And so when I had a miscarriage, it was devastating. It was literally devastating. And it was only, it wasn't even, it was like a month in or whatever, month and a half in. And I was just absolutely bonkers, devastated. And so it took a lot of healing. And I remember when you're talking about the bitterness, walking through, I don't know why I was walking through Babies R Us, but I was walking through Babies R Us after that. And I would see other women who were pregnant, and I would be so sad. I'm like, I'm happy for you, but I'm so sad. Why can't I do that? Why? And just came to the place where I'm like, Lord, I know that I feel like it is your desire. I feel like you put this desire in my heart, and however that looks, I'm willing to walk whatever path, you have in front of me, and I'm going to not be bitter. I just refuse to do that. But I know in your journey, wasn't there a turning point or a spot where in your faith, because you're crying out to God, you're like, God, what do I think? How do I navigate this? Was there a little a turning point, or where you were like, okay, I'm going to stand on this promise, or I'm going to be good whichever way this goes? Was there a place where you really felt like God was speaking to you?
Yeah, I would say about halfway through the journey, we had moved to Chicago, and we had started infertility treatment at one of the top 5 clinics in the whole country. And we had been there for about 9 months, going in for all the shots, all the things. Nothing had worked. And I remember thinking okay, I don't really know where to go from here. And I felt like I had exhausted even all of the conversations around me. Not that I would complain about it, but I think when you're almost 4 years into a journey, you're tired of talking about it. You don't want to talk about it anymore yourself. And we were at a church in Chicago, and the pastor preached a word on, he's a faith-based preacher, and he preached a word on the covenant that Abraham had with God. And in that, he broke down how everything that God promised Abraham is ours as well, because we're the seed of Abraham. Mm-hmm. And it was the most eye-opening, I think, word and on-time word for me in that season, to hear that everything that God had promised him. And not only that, just being able to read and walk through the story of Abraham and Sarah, and how, at times it played out the same way for her. That she was in her flesh at times. She doubted God at times. He told her that she was going to have a son, and she laughed at him. She kind of journeyed through all of the same humanly things that we journey through on that. And one of the things that he talked about in that message was in Deuteronomy 28. It has all the promises that we're given according to the covenant that God had with Abraham. And one of those is that the fruit of your womb will be blessed. And I remember reading all of those and praying all of those and repeating all of those. But the one, of course, that stuck out to me the most was the one about the fruit of your womb would be blessed. And so I just started praying every day in my devotional time, and I found additional scriptures. And I would just lay hands on myself with the oil, and I would say, your word says, your promise says that the fruit of my womb will be blessed, and that means I have to have fruit. And I would just command my womb to be fruitful. And that was kind of my turning point, I would say, where I was able to just kind of say, okay, I don't know what this looks like for me. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it will happen. Because alongside that, I would read that God would give us the desires of our heart. And in that, he wouldn't have given me the desire to be a mother and to have my own kids if that was not part of who I was. And so along with that, I would, just cling to that God gave me this desire, and he's just going to be faithful to watch over his word and perform it.
So how does that play out? So you believed, you stood, and you began to pray that over yourself, and then what happened?
Well, the Lord just began to kind of drop people into our lives to help kind of support that vision. And one of those people was a holistic doctor that we found, and he had volunteered in our youth ministry. We were youth pastors there, and he just came up to us one day and he said, look, I just feel like the Lord told me that I need to, help get you whole, help get your body strong, to support, your prayer and your promise of a child. So if you would let me do that, then I would love to do that for free. And so we were like, okay. I didn't even know what a holistic doctor was. So over the course of 9 months, he did blood work and just tons of different things, and found things that had been off in my body along the way, and things that doctors didn't even catch. He would text me and say, my staff's praying for you. I'm praying for wisdom. I got your reports back today. Give me a week to analyze everything, and we're going to, hit it with a new plan. And it just gave me hope, I think, for the first time in a long time, and I could feel the difference. I could feel I was getting healthier. And Daniel came in one day and he said, what, I just think that moving forward, we can't worry about this, because it had been so consuming. We can't worry about the timing. We can't worry about the ifs. We just have to trust God, know it's going to happen, get your body healed and well, and God's going to do it. And so about 9 months later, wasn't thinking a thing in the world. We had carried on with ministry. Everything was going great. We were in a wonderful season. And I was late and hadn't told him. And I had sworn off pregnancy tests 2 years before, because I was like, I cannot see one line again or I'm going to lose my mind. So I was just totally not going to do it. And a day turned into 2, which turned into a week. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I need to go and take one because my hormones are off. I'm going to have to call the doctor on Monday. And of course, they're going to ask me if I took a test. So I'll just take one so I can say yes and book an appointment. So I got one in secret. Just so happened to be Christmas Eve. I set the alarm really early, about 4:30 in the morning on Christmas morning, because I just didn't want to do it around anybody. And so I went in, took the test, sat on the counter, turned around, and it was positive. And I was like,
Yes.
oh my God. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I've never seen this before. So Dana was obviously still asleep. So I busted in the bedroom and gave him a heart attack. And I was just yelling. I was like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, you're what? After 4 years. He's like, what? It's 4 a.m. What are you talking about? And I'm like, I took a test. Like, you have to come here. You have to see it. So we went in there, and he was like, just like the EPT commercials or whatever. He's like, what do we do now? You know, we just looked at each other and we're like, I don't know what to do, you know. And we just hugged and prayed and, you know, just thanked the Lord for his faithfulness. And then we got Zion.
That's so awesome. And now you have 2 children, right? And how old are they?
They are about to be 6 and 7. So the second one came right after the first one came. Yep, 3 months after Zion was born, Glisten showed up on the scene. So
That's awesome.
Yep, we got a boy and a girl, just like, you know, we had always wanted, and they're a year apart, and, you know, God is faithful.
What would you say, so looking back when you were talking about when you were going through the battle, especially in the beginning, when people would say crazy things that were not helpful, what would you say, because I'm sure that, I know there's a lot of women out there who are walking through that same journey, and they're not seeing the results yet. I love about your story is that, you know, the holistic doctor who came along, you know, that I really think that's the Lord. Like, he can do what we can't do. We try to strive and do things in our own strength, and we can get really narrow-minded and think, well, it has to happen like this and just like this, or it's not right. Like, this is what I want, and this is how it has to happen. But sometimes God can do things in different ways, and so he sent that holistic doctor in. And so, because, you know, we're body, soul, spirit, we got to take care of all of those things. But what would you say to someone who has a friend maybe who's struggling through that? What would you say the best thing for them to do is? And then so speak to the friend, but then also speak to the person who's battling that, or maybe has passed the age where they can even have kids and that dream never came true for them.
Well, I would say, you know, you have to find a friend. I think a realistic friend. A friend that has 5 kids is not a realistic friend. I mean, they can love you, they can pray for you, but you want to find, and you need to find someone, whether it's in your community at church, or, you know, just pray that God would send you somebody that, you know, could be there and help strengthen you in that season. But, you know, to the friend, I think you just have to say, you know, I don't know why, and it's not my place to understand why, but it is my place to love you, and we're going to pray this baby into existence one way or another. And sometimes, you know, I think that is part of the journey of infertility, is being able to identify when maybe you're not meant to carry a baby, and what that looks like, or maybe you are, but it just looks different. Maybe you have to, you know, use someone else's eggs, or maybe it's an IVF factor, or maybe, you know, at the end of it, I believe that God uses doctors as well. And, you know, maybe you're meant to be an adoptive parent and love kids like crazy who would, you know, otherwise not have a great family, or whatever that journey is. I think that you have to really just resolve in your spirit that, God, I know that you've called me to be a mom. You've called my fruit to be prosperous. And if that is through adoption, or if that is through some other means, would you help my heart be okay with it? Yeah. And I think one thing that I would, you know, in hindsight maybe have done is maybe seek counseling. I didn't. And it's hard when all of your conversations have to do with people's opinions and their thoughts. It gets very chatterboxy.
Yes.
You know, you get a lot going on in your mind, and it's hard, you know, to shut that all down and really focus on, okay, but this is what God said. And, you know, it has a negative impact a lot of times even on your marriage, because the husband is a lot more willing to just say, oh, it's going to happen. Oh, it's easy, because they're not going through the internal struggle of a woman. where in your heart that's the one thing you're created to do and you can't do it. It's such a hopeless feeling. There's nothing that you can do to change it. You can't do anything differently. You have to do what you're doing, and if it works or it doesn't work, that's all you can do, and in that you feel very helpless and a lot of times very hopeless. And so that would be my encouragement, is to not try to just hold it all in like we try to do and just say, oh, I'm fine. Mother's Day is terrible. I have so many friends, and it's almost like when you buy a new car and then you're like, this is an original car. I've never seen this car anywhere. And then you see it everywhere. When you're going through infertility, that's kind of what it's like. It's like you don't really know that many people deal with it. But statistically speaking, 1 in 8 go through it. So in my life, I have probably 5 really great best friends that went through it or are still going through it. And on Mother's Day, I text them and say, Happy Mother's Day. I'm praying for you. Like you got it. That baby's on the way. And just to have those people, in your life who don't have to always kind of sulk with you, but who can remember you. One of the most powerful things that I think in hindsight that I did do right was along the way, whenever I was feeling really sad, or usually on Mother's Days, I would go to TJ Maxx or Target, and I would buy a cute little outfit, a hat, a blanket, a something, and I started a baby hope chest. And I knew that I wanted a girl. That was, not that I didn't want a boy, but I knew I wanted a girl. And so I would buy all these little pieces along the way, and on the tags, I would write the date. And then whenever I did, finally conceive, I was able to go back through and look at that box and see all of these times, that I was feeling sad, or all these times where I felt hopeless, but I forced myself in faith to go and buy a pair of maternity pants or, a different thing for baby, because I knew that I just had to keep going. And those little things helped me, hold on, honestly. And I think that God honored that, because he saw, like, even though my heart was having trouble keeping faith at times, I could still show my faith, and my belief in him that he would be faithful.
I love that. Faith is really it's in motion. I mean, you have to take action. Yeah. I think sometimes and it's just believing God even when you can't see it. You can't see him moving. It's, I'm just going to keep going and not giving up. I mean, really, I think that's when we fall into despair, is when we give up. Right. And I know with and just I love what you said about being there, because really, I think, isn't that what is true for any struggle? I mean, you just really want somebody to be there with you. And the fact that, got one of the names of Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. Like, he just wants to be with us. And sometimes, it's happy times, and sometimes it's really sad times and really rough times. But the fact that he's there, there's just something about his presence. And I think that we can be that for our friends, and we can be that for each other, and not try to have the answers, because we don't. I mean, we have no clue sometimes why. Right. And we don't need to pretend like we do. We don't know. But we can be there for each other, and we can love each other, and we can pray for each other. And we can just offer the gift of hope. Let's keep hoping together. Let's keep praying together and believe in God for what's next. So I love that. Yeah. And I think, even with the miscarriage thing, I was thinking about, because men, they do struggle too. I know that he was, maybe just hoping and thinking what's going to happen. It's going to happen later. And I think my husband maybe felt that way too, but he was broken too with the miscarriage, because for us, we had done so many crazy things and had lived such a life far from God, that we almost felt like we didn't deserve a baby anyway. Like, we don't deserve this. We don't deserve it. And maybe this has happened because of what we did. And so we had some good godly people say, no, that's not it. Yeah. Like, that's not the reason. So you don't need to go that route. Just, they let us grieve, and they were there for us, and we got away. We went to the water, for like a couple of days, went to a lake and just cried, and we're together and grieved through that. And, of course, just kept trying. And then here we are 3 kids later, back to back to back. And it's been awesome.
Yeah.
But I know that there are so many people that struggle, and we want to be there for them. We want to offer hope, and we want to, all of us have, I guess, dreams in our life that can go unfulfilled or unmet, expectations. And so I think it's so important for our heart to be completely just surrendered to God and saying, God, I want whatever you want for my life, whatever desire you have for my life. I just want to lay it before you and trust you that if you want that in my life, then it's going to glorify you. It's going to be my dream's going to come true. But if it's not meant for me, I'm okay. I'll be all right, because I know that ultimately you have my best at heart. So anyways, well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. And I'm excited because you're going to be also sharing your incredible salvation testimony when we have our Glisten conference coming up. And so I'm super excited that you'll be there for that. So yay.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so
you.
much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for watching today. I hope this was a blessing to you. Please check us out on Instagram at Glisten Women. Like, subscribe, share, and you can find out more about Heather in the description. And I can't wait to see you next time.